Hello, everyone. Welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I'm Nick Henning, and we are here today to talk about the Seven Wonders final that just took place at the World Series of Boardgaming in Vegas. This is the first of the streamed finals that they had, so you might have caught this live and already kind of know what's going on here. But we're going to go ahead and basically talk our way through this game. We've got 5 players here, and the format of this means that they're going to draft their cards just like in Seven Wonders, but generally what they're going to do is reveal one at a time. The video is going to allow us to sometimes see exactly what they flip and sometimes not, so I'll try to kind of like update and talk through everyone's kind of positions and what's going on throughout the course of the game. We've got in the first seat here is Chris and Babylon, Garner in the second seat as Rhodes, Molly as Giza, we've got Ricky as Ephesus in the fourth seat, and then Gunn as Alexandria in the fifth seat. Chris is the one with the big long beard, Garner is the shorter, closer beard, Molly is the one woman at the table, Ricky is the redheaded gentleman in the blue shirt, and Gunn is the man in the pink shirt on the right there. I'm kind of in a weird spot in this, but actually this, I think, winds up being better because there's a couple camera angles that are going to work out the best where I happen to be in this specific spot. So we're going to see how that goes. The players are starting off by drafting their leaders because they are playing the leaders expansion. If you're not familiar, they're going to draft essentially a couple leaders at the beginning, and then at the beginning of the first, second, and third ages, they are going to be allowed to play one of their leader cards. So essentially they have an extra card that they're playing every age. And one of those leader cards is going to, one of the options is they can discard them for money. They could use them for their wonder, just like any other card, or they can play them as leaders. Leaders always cost gold. And so one thing that they do is they start with more money at the beginning of the game to allow them to essentially engage with this additional mechanic here. All right, let's talk about the various factions, I was going to say, the various wonders that the players are. So Babylon, Chris's one is, he's playing A Babylon. It's A for Babylon, Rhodes, and Giza, and B for Ephesus and Alexandria. I'm not sure if the players chose these or if these were randomly assigned. I do know that what wonder they received was random. I just don't know if it was the A or B side was also random. Babylon is the one that really benefits the science strategy, so I'm going to expect to see that Chris is probably going to lean into that if he's playing Babylon. Rhodes is really interesting and I think quite good. They're good at the military strategy, and military is pretty powerful. It scores you up to 18 points in the game, knocking down your opponents a little bit. But the other thing about Rhodes that's really nice is I think that it disincentivizes your neighbors from going into military because it's harder for them to contest you as kind of the military master with those bonuses. And so it can be a pretty easy fight, which is really what you want with military. You don't want to kind of get into an arms race with someone else. So hopefully that's true for Garner in this game. Molly is playing Giza, which just has sort of more potential raw points and tends to be, because of that, wants to build its wonder, I think, making sure that they have the production resources necessary to make that happen. Ricky's playing Ephesus, which I think is one of my absolute favorite ones. Getting money just gives you a lot of versatility over the course of the game. And worst case scenario, you don't spend the money and you're still able to score 1 point for every 3 gold, which is about as good as a conversion rate as you can get. And then finally, Gunn is playing Alexandria, which has the marketplace as the first option. And then the second option is the marketplace for the grays. I forget what it's called, but essentially is going to give Gunn a lot of options in terms of resources. So personally, Alexandria is one of my favorites. Ephesus is right up there with it. But really all 5 of these I think are solid, strong wonders. I mean, at the end of the day, there aren't really any bad ones. I don't love playing Museum of Halicarnassus, but that's maybe an exception rather than a rule. I also don't know this game well enough, like from a statistical meta standpoint, if maybe some of the wonders have larger win rates than the other ones. I'm really not sure, actually. I bet that must exist out there somewhere, and I tried to do a quick search, but I wasn't able to find the answer to that question. So we're going to go through the various ones here. I know you can't see it, but Chris took, I forget his name, but what he does is makes it so that it's a little bit cheaper to build green buildings, which is pretty amazing for Babylon, because having that one resource discount means that he gets to sort of ignore the problems that you can have as Babylon or as a science strategy in the first round, which is you need to take the resources to take that to build those, the gray resources in particular, to build those science buildings. But you are also really struggling to get those at the same time as your green cards. So unless you have a perfect draft, you can have a hard first round. So that leader is going to let him sort of cheat past that and then take advantage of the fact that science sort of scales upward from there. Garner's allows him to have a discount on red buildings. I don't love this for Rhodes. Rhodes is already good at military, and so making him even better at military seems a little bit redundant to me. Molly is playing Bill Keese, and I'm told that that's one of the strongest leaders in this game. I haven't really played with leaders all that much, just the one time, but I can absolutely see why, because Bill Keese basically says that Molly can buy any resource from a neighbor for a price of only one. So she doesn't need to worry about any of those markets at the beginning. And essentially with money, she can build a kind of like full production network based on what her neighbors are doing, and probably can run that a little bit smoother throughout the course of the game. I think they're going to switch over to the other side. Ricky took a leader that gives him +1 point every time he plays a blue card. And Gunn took a leader that gives him $2 every time he plays a yellow card. That one seems fun to me. I really love playing yellow cards, probably more than anyone has a right to. So it's a bit redundant sometimes, but I do think that it is pretty neat. All right. I think they're just finishing they just finished the draft, so they're going to run their first cards here. And there we see those leaders that I mentioned. And what happens here, we're not seeing everybody flip their cards all at once, but essentially everybody took brown production as their first action, and mostly prioritized that spend a gold for the 2 different resources option that we're seeing on this side of the table. That pretty much is true across the board. The only exception, I think, was Molly, who took a single, and Garner, who took a single. Or no, maybe Garner was the only one who took a single. We'll see when we get to the other side of the board. But that, I think, is a pretty standard opening for Seven Wonders. These players are going to want to give themselves options to play cards later. And so, you're going to do that by increasing your production, looking at the things that your neighbors can produce, and then deciding, hey, do I want some money in order to build those? To me, one of the most important things to have access to is 2 wood, because that allows you to build the marketplace in the second round that gives you essentially like a wild resource. I'm a big fan of setting myself up for that. So if I have 1 wood or my neighbor has 1 wood, I'll try to make sure that there's a second one somewhere that I can get access to. Other than that, it kind of depends on your wonder. I think what it is that you're going to prioritize in terms of your brown resources. Gray resources depends a lot on, what kinds of, if you may be going for certain science strategies, then you might value certain ones more than others. But for the most part, the gray resources, you just kind of want like a spread. I don't really have a sense of like, writing is better than glass or anything like that. Yeah, wood's the only one that really stands out to me as being one that I really want to rush. Over here on the left side of the table, we see that Chris has picked up a market that allows him to buy discounted grays. We see that Ricky here has taken a tavern to give him some cash and a lot of extra flexibility. That's kind of a bummer for Gunn, because I think in the previous hand he passed over a tavern so that he could take that military card, which I thought was an interesting choice, because a tavern is $7 for Gunn, right? Because he's got Xenophon in play that gives him that +2 gold. And he instead said, you know what, I'm going to actually really value getting up ahead on the military this game. I think what that kind of does is it threatens the nearby players, Ricky and Chris, with like, hey, if you take a military action, it's going to kind of not be so great for you, and then we're going to be in an arms race. So sort of, I think Gunn here is valuing that rushing out. The other thing is that Gunn is sitting next to Chris, who's sitting next to Garner, who's playing Rhodes, And I think Chris is not incentivized to go military. Science strategies tend to just totally ignore military. So Gunn might just be saying, hey, you know what? I want some free points. I think Chris isn't going to fight back. I'm going to punch that guy all game long. And we see Chris doing exactly that, getting started on that science strategy for free, thanks to his leader. Garner is making use of his leader there. I think it's Leonidas, to put a military card into play and get himself started there. And Molly grabbed a blue card. Interesting. Ricky grabbed a free writing card. Maybe he was just kind of actually looking at Gunn's hand, which just came from Ricky. We can see that Ricky didn't have a ton of choices. It either was going to be that blue card or that writing card. I'm curious. It's very interesting to see that Ricky decided, hey, I'm going to take this green tablet instead of this glass. This gray card that produces glass. I guess his thinking is that Gunn, I believe, produces glass straight off of his board. So Ricky's saying, you know what, I can just buy glass whenever I need it. So why don't I take this green tablet that allows me to maybe score a couple points? Maybe it makes Chris's life a little bit harder. You know, he didn't necessarily know that Chris was going to play a tablet card that turn. That being said, that hand was full of green cards, so I don't think it's really going to stop the science strategy all that much. Archimedes is the name of it. I don't know why that one is black. It has to do with like maybe the additions of the game or something. Science is definitely the green color as far as I'm concerned. Molly's really leaning pretty heavily into points over here. That's maybe a bummer for Ricky. I don't know if Ricky was planning on kind of like grabbing some easy early points with his +1 to every blue building. And Molly's really also working on building out that infrastructure, which is interesting, right? Because Bilquis allows her to sort of buy things at a discount, but she still just wants to have a lot of options, which I think makes sense. You know, the pyramids of Giza have, I think, a pretty high demand for resources, particularly brown resources. So she's just allowing herself to kind of get open there. If I can read that arrow correctly from Ricky, it's going to allow him to buy things from Gunn. And I think one of the things that's really interesting is those marketplaces are like a blessing and a curse, right? Because as the player receiving the dollar, you're like, oh, it's only $1 instead of $2. However, that decision of like, do I pay you or do I pay the player to my other side becomes a non-decision. Ricky's always going to be paying Gunn. It's just going to be less than it necessarily would be. So a little give and take there for Gunn as the recipient of that market. I guess at the end of the day, if you spent money across the two players equally or completely one-sidedly, it's equivalent for Gunn and just bad for Molly and good for Ricky, right? All the bad for Molly is the good for Ricky. Garner here is going to take another military, which I am surprised to see. It seems a bit unnecessary. The other players next to him have not indicated that they're going to take military cards. Maybe Garner is worried that Molly's going to build it if he passed it to her. But it's not a great situation for either of those players to get into an arms race with them. And maybe he actually, like, he can't build the second tier. I'm actually not sure what he used to build the first tier of that wonder there. But he's looking pretty straightforward in terms of resource production there. So interesting. So Gunn grabbed a green as well. I guess he kind of had the same thinking as Ricky. Like, I'll go ahead and take this. I can buy the resource that you make, the gray resource that you make. I don't need to do it for myself. It's almost too bad that he couldn't throw that green building underneath his board, or maybe he chose not to. I'd have to see what his production and gold looks like if he could have maybe bought a resource from a neighbor to do that. Catch Ricky there making a subtle little glance at his neighbor saying, what do you have again? Which maybe he was deciding between a military and another card. all in all, Epic 1 tends to be, I think, relatively flat. I mean, you're looking usually for sort of production options here, and then maybe you start scoring some easy points at the beginning, and you kind of plan on picking up some production in Age 2, or the yellow buildings in Age 2 that let you cheat on the production. Chris here has really valued those brown cards. I mean, getting one going last that doesn't match your other ones is pretty nice, keeps your options open. And he can buy grays from his neighbors, but there's really only one gray that Gunn is holding, and there isn't any that Garner is holding. So he's off to an okay start. It's really too bad for him that he didn't get that gear, which I think that Gunn took away. Ricky's start here is like a totally solid fundamental start. He's got some production, he's got some money, a couple points here and there. Keep in mind that the 3 points is actually 4 points for him, so he feels a little bit better than that. Gunn's start is a nice varied start, and he's uncontested on military, which is a great place to be at. So now he can kind of, maybe play another military next round and just sort of keep getting really easy military points, which is really nice. The only thing I think that is awkward about Gunn's position is that he played Xenophon, who gives him money every time he plays yellows, and then he didn't play a single yellow. Pretty clear that the other players super liked those cards, as they kind of drafted out those marketplaces pretty quickly. Molly is holding some production and some points. She did manage to get a tavern, which I think is really nice for Bilquis. It's a sweet sort of mini combo for her, because she's got that money which she can use to like buy her neighbors things. Unfortunately for her, Garner doesn't have a lot in the way of production, but Ricky does. So she does have some choices there. And Garner has a market that's pointed perfectly towards the player that he wants it to be, because he can buy all sorts of things from him. So clearly he's not going to build any browns. But for this side of the table, I'm definitely worried about how are they going to interact with grays. Like, none of them built any. Garner just doesn't even touch them, and the other players only touch one on their sides. Now, I think it's pretty interesting that in Age 1 here, not a single player put a gray production building into play. It's really interesting, because in the second epic, you can get essentially more powerful production cards that are brown, right? The doubles, if you want, but you can't get the grays are the exact same power as they were in the first epic. And obviously the dream still is just finding a way to ignore that entirely. I think that kind of like dearth of grays is probably beneficial for Alexandria, because Gunn can actually, he can make it with the second level of his wonder. All right, Chris just says, I'm going to build my wonder here. I'm not excited about my leaders. I'll just kind of advance forward. I know I'm going to get that middle science thing. And then Garner here plays something that says, hey, I get 1 point for every red card, which I think is really interesting. It kind of makes more sense to me about why he wanted to get that discount. I still think it's a little bit overkill, but at least there's a bit of a combo there. Molly played a leader that gives her discounts on blues, which is going to be a bummer for Ricky in the third epic, as he's going to want to be playing blues for that bonus point that he has. He uses this other leader here just to also build his wonder, which is easy enough for him, as he needs to buy a $1 stone from Gunn, but then he gets $4 back from Ephesus, which just, he's sitting on $8 right now and has a lot of options, and Gunn's sitting on $6 right now and he has a lot of options. And I missed his leader situation, but if I remember correctly, he didn't actually play one. He maybe also did the level of his wonder. We'll have to go back and see when we get there. I don't have strong feelings about who's doing well or who's doing poorly at the end of Epic 1. I'm not convinced about Garner's position, but I do know that the second edition sort of increased the value of playing multiple red cards, because there's an additional card that they put in the third epic that benefits repeated red cards. And you see Garner there is indicating that this time they're passing to the right. I think one of the interesting dynamics of this game is that you primarily want to be in a situation where you've noticed what the player to your right is doing, because they're going to be passing to you in rounds 1 and 3. And if you can get kind of, they're not going to take cards away from you, that's great. But then If you're doing that, then in the second round, or if your opponent to your left is doing that, and in the second round, it's going to be really awkward for you as they kind of grab the things. That being said, Seven Wonders is like almost like a do everything kind of game. And, you're going to pick something that you're not going to do, but you're mostly going to do most of the things, I think. And that's just because the game space is only so big, which is good. It can't be too complicated. Otherwise, the game has more mistakes than it's prone to have already. I think part of the reason the players are doing that one card flip at a time is I have a friend who joked that he doesn't know that he's ever seen a board state of Seven Wonders where someone didn't accidentally cheat somehow. And for a game that's so simple, like it's kind of an amusing and disappointing insight into just how easy it is to make a mistake even with a simple game. But a couple of rules here and there, and people not essentially double checking each other because we're all playing simultaneously can make it tough. So I actually really like the way that they did this here. It's just because sort of like everybody drafts and then they flip. They go like one at a time. Very, very clean in the process. I'm impressed by how they made it specific, and it still plays really quickly. Looks like nice. Yeah, so Chris grabbed the marketplace there, so he's basically got all the options now. Garner played military, which I've already kind of expressed how I think that's a little bit excessive. That being said, immediately Molly plays a military card, so Garner's maybe rewarded for sort of increasing the distance of that gap there, just to say, hey, you know what, don't mess with me. I am going to be unstoppable. Just leave the Colossus of Rhodes be. Molly does have the situation now where she's kind of punching Ricky. Ricky could, of course, play a 2 military card himself to kind of tie it up and then also beat Gun, which I think is pretty motivating, right? I mean, even just if nothing happens in the third epic, it's essentially worth 4 points, like not a -1 for Molly and +3 for beating Gun. So maybe Ricky's going to value taking a 2 military card, given that Molly had taken that one there. Sometimes you can have that sort of Pax 7 Wonder situation where you just agree on like, hey, if we don't play any of them, we both don't get negatives. Sometimes players will tacitly do that, but that's not the situation that's taking place here. Over on this side, looks like Ricky also got himself a marketplace. Unsurprising, those things went away really quickly. And then Gun got one of the gray marketplaces, which I forget what they're called, which I don't love for him because he's going to get a gray marketplace when he builds the second level of his Wonder, and he already makes a blue. So really, he has a lot of those resources and could buy writing from Ricky. So I don't know what else there was in that hand, but I don't know that I would have valued that building so high for him. That being said, I have commented on how almost none of the players have those gray buildings, and so maybe it's just miserable for the other people that he took that, and that alone is worth it to him. I don't know if that's what he was thinking about, but that is sort of an interesting thing now that I'm talking about it out loud. I'm wondering if he sort of noticed that dearth of grays at the table, or if he just kind of took this because he just really, values this kind of building. On the screen, you see them talking about certain guilds sort of prepping their plans for what they think round 3 might look like, the commentators. I do like how they did the green screen there. I think it's great. Pretty effective. Those black cards must be leaders. Yeah, it's got to be leaders. Like I said, I've only played the leaders expansion one time. Looks like they got some thinking going on right here. I'm not quite sure what. We're probably waiting on one player that we can't see right now because I think everyone else is in good shape right here. All right, looks like we're started. Okay, so Garner played a building that gave him money for browns that are surrounding him, which is awesome because he's surrounded by a lot of browns. Chris played a green to kind of continue on his green stack there. Looks like he got another compass, so that's exactly what he wants to see as his plays. And then Molly is expanding her production to just be able to make everything. I kind of wonder if she's overproducing right now. It's 2 bricks. Maybe she needs it to build the like middle level of her wonder. Oh, and so Gunn actually maybe was nervous about Ricky playing a 2 military, plays his out. It's kind of unnecessary for beating. Well, actually, Chris just needs 1. So I think what Gunn is doing here is he's essentially flexing and saying, look, Ricky, Chris, don't bother. If you're going to play a military, you're going to have to play 2 military. It's already kind of the third pick of the round, so just worry about your things. I'm going to take my military points. And like, man, that's really nice for Ricky. I think one of the best seats you can be at a table is 2 spaces away from roads because you know those players next to roads are disincentivized from fighting there. So I respect the play, and I think it's value, but I do wonder what he passed. Like, he might have missed out on something. Maybe not. I like it. I like him saying, kind of like, frees himself up from options. And it's also honestly good for Ricky and Chris. You don't want one of those situations where you play a military card at the same time as the player to your side plays a military card, because then you've all just kind of like maintained parity for each other, and it's basically good for every other player at the table when you do that, except for maybe this neighbor over here. So it's one of the funny dynamics of neighbors, but like, you can't just play this game against your neighbors because there's 3 other people or 2 other people at this table, right, that you're playing with. That's nice for Chris. Chris gets another green here. That's what he wants to do. Garner builds up on his wonder, which I don't know what his other cards were, but it doesn't seem like he needs to do that right now. Maybe what he's doing is he's really valuing building that level 2 building, and then so he can build the level 3 building using the level 2 cards, so they can build the level 3 cards. But man, he just paid through the nose with resources for that, because he bought all of those bricks, and most of them not from the player that gave him the discount. Ricky's going to go ahead and use his leader bonus to say, hey, this 5-pointer is actually a 6-pointer. Pretty sweet for a second round card. And Gunn's going to build some additional wood. Does he even need that? I mean, now Gunn has like tons of... Oh, I see. The third level of his wonder requires 4 wood. That makes sense. That's one of the things I think with building up the wonders is that, like, a lot of times I find that you're in the situation where you like build something just to build that level of the wonder, and suddenly what looks like a 7-point play is now like a 3.5-point play. At least in Gunn's situation, it looks like he didn't have any forests or green production beforehand, so at the very least it like lets him buy the sort of very expensive, your palaces and things like that later on in the game without having to spend quite as much money, because he's paying Ricky the full amount, even if Ricky's only paying him 1, thanks to the market. Let's see what we have going on here for Garner. So he's holding onto his science card and debating whether he can pass this to Chris or not. The answer is probably no. It's kind of one of the things about science in this game, is that if no one contests science, meaning that either the players are drafting it as well themselves, or they're using it to discard, or using it more likely to build levels of their wonder, the science player is probably just going to completely run away with it. That being said, you have to get the cards as a science player. If other people end up cutting your strategy, it's tough. It can really hurt. And I think a lot of people, a lot of Seven Wonders players have learned to fear the science. And so when you're playing at a table where everybody at this table has won at least twice, they know how deadly science can be. Like, those points scale in a way that nothing else in this game scales. Everything else is like pretty linear in ramp, whereas that the science ones are just a lot more explosive. I was about to say science tags because I was playing Terraforming Mars over the weekend. Fair amount of thinking, but I'd say largely the players are playing at a pretty healthy clip here. I assume that Garner did indeed take that green if he's building another level of his wonder here. Again, paying a couple bucks for it. So he went from rich to broke, and that's because he has no production there. Molly's going to go ahead and start jamming her wonder. It's good usually to use your level 2 cards to build up your wonder, because then you can use the level 3 cards, which are more powerful and more points. Ricky's going to say, hey, I'm okay with a 4-point building because it's actually 5-point building for me. And he's got a really powerful production infrastructure there, thanks to his neighbors and his yellow cards. Oh, interesting. Okay, so Gun has taken a tablet. Wait a second. So first of all, Gun is going for a set, which he maybe is thinking, like, how can I counter green too? But I see. Okay, so Chris probably had that tablet card already. It was probably a duplicate because he's got that second tablet on there. But Gun now essentially is saying, I'm highly motivated to take a compass in the 3rd round, which sucks for Chris, who's sitting to his left. Oh, great. More military cards for Rhodes. That's really what we want to see. Be curious to see if he decides to build the stone. It's not like he needs a lot of it. I could just see him discarding a card for money, honestly. It's kind of a bummer hand, but they often are bummer hands by this stage, I think. Gun's checking out his leaders there, see what options he has. Yeah. That poor Xenophon has really just repaid himself. That's all he's done so far. Such a dud. I feel like Archimedes has done his work. Oh, that second leader for Garner is not a point per red card, it's a point per lost token your neighbors have. Okay, so for Chris opening this gray right here, now he can actually build this. He can buy blues from his neighbor, but there's no writing. And that's going to kind of stymie him in terms of what he's going to be able to build in the next round. I think that's definitely going to get in the way. And that's the tough thing, I think, with science as well. It's not just people hate drafting you. It's like you might literally not be able to build anything. And Gun and Ricky are the only players at the table that have access to every resource. Ricky's using it to just keep on banking points right now, which is pretty dope. 10, 18, 20, plus 4. So he's on 24 points, minus 3, so 21 points. Science is always hard to count, but Chris's point score looks pretty miserable right now. Garner's looking at like 8 points right now. Molly over there, it depends on it. If she builds her wonder, she'll be point leader at the end of this round, right? Because she'll have 15, 19, 22, 27, and then military-wise another 1. So yeah, she's going to be point leader at the end of this round if she builds her wonder, which is what I suspect she'd do, because it's nice to use those number 2s. So that's great for her. The problem that she's going to have in Epic 3 is she only has access to Ricky's grays, which I believe is just a pink. I kind of wonder if she wanted to take that blue, the gray glass production that Garner just showed us, She's going to be a little bit stymied in terms of her production. Oh, and there's also a right. Yeah, so she can buy everything except for the glass. So hopefully that doesn't get in her way, but it's going to. I mean, there's so many cards that need multiple of the different grade cards at the end. So, this is a pretty weak card. It only gives him $2, and then I guess more yellows. Maybe he's trying to like build that stack of yellows for the card that pays you for yellows. But to play that card, you need a blue, I'm pretty sure. Like to produce a blue, a glass. You can tell I just call them by their colors, and I'm trying to not do that because I know it's confusing because the blue cards and then blue glass. I think he should have just taken the glass. I mean, he'd make more than $2 for it. From the other players next to him, he'd be incentivized to buy it, and it would allow him to build things because he doesn't have a lot of options. He has one of the most paltry production systems in the whole game right now, and doesn't have a lot of options. So at the end of round 2 here, let's see where we're at. Gunn has a lot of production options. He's got some kind of awkward green cards, but he'll probably get a compass, which will make those green cards worth 10 points for a set of 3, which is like fine, not crazy, but fine. A couple blue cards, but really Gunn's nice situation is that he's got some easy military wins. So I think he's off to a pretty good start here. He's currently one of my favorites. Chris is going on a green strategy, but he's lacking access to writing and doesn't have any gear cards. So I'm worried about him actually getting to pull everything together. Garner, I don't love what's going on Garner's board at all. He's just got a big stack of reds, has like kind of overkilled it, doesn't have much in the way of production. I honestly don't know what he's going to be able to do in the final round of the game. I feel like he's just going to be hanging around, discarding cards in order to be able to buy resources, and he's going to run out of cash. Molly, as I said, is point leader, which is nice. She needs to kind of keep up with that. So it's going to depend a lot on what guilds come out and what she's able to pick up, because she is lacking that glass resource, and a number of guilds that come out use that glass resource, so she'll probably be playing blues instead. She does get to cheat on blue costs, so she'll probably do that a few times, which is also good for her, because then she's kind of cutting Ricky from the blue cards, because he gets +1 for every blue card that he played. And Ricky, I think, is much like Gunn, sitting in a very nice situation because he has access to all the possible resources. I think he has one of the better resource infrastructures between him and his neighbors out there. However, he also has a ton of points. He's a second point place in terms of points right now. So Gunn, I think, is in the best position, but he has more points that he needs to make up. Whereas Ricky has great production and good points, just not quite as many as Molly, who has slightly less production and points. And Chris and Garner are the ones that I'm worried about right now. Chris plays a leader for 5 points. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then Garner plays the guy that I think lets him pull something from the discard pile. And maybe he pulled a yellow there. Can't quite see what it is because of the color of it. Molly took a leader that's extra points for purples, which is really speculative and dangerous. You don't have a lot of control over what purples get passed to you when, and which ones are good and which ones are bad. I don't like that leader very much. I haven't played enough with leaders to really have a strong sense of what the options are, but I legitimately wonder if just discarding it for $3 would have been better for her, because again, Bill Keys just lets her cheat, and then she would just play out cards for the rest of the round. Whereas right now it looks like she's only on $2. So instead of buying that leader, discarding the leader for some money, I think is the way that I would have gone with it. Ricky plays Midas, which is a big game for Ephesus. Ephesus almost always ends with money, and so doubling the value of money, right? So normally you get that 3-to-1 ratio. Midas says, I do that again, is going to be nice for him. Now he's only sitting on $7 right now, but he's got another level of his wonder to build. And like I said, he's got a decent infrastructure. He's not going to spend a crazy amount of money. And finally, Gunn has 2 points per wonder level. He's definitely building his last wonder level. So basically his says I'm worth 6 points on it. That might be the best leader that we saw played out here. Did Garner take a military card? I don't know if I missed that or not, but that'd be wild to me if Garner took a military card. I do think it's really interesting that they have this game with a judge, but they still have one of the players dealing out the cards. In the other games, a lot of the other finals and semifinals games that I played, the judges were a little bit more hands-on with the card manipulation. All right, away we go. That's a hilarious guild to see. It's a bad guild for Molly, who's going to get it next. It's a great guild for Chris, who's going to get it last. What a bummer. Yeah, that yellow card is a great card for Garner right now. Pile of points because he's got all 3 levels of his wonder already built. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any way he's going to build that palace. He's like checking. Is it there? Is it there? I got it. No, sir. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. One of everything. I missed what he took because I was busy looking at the Palace and Pantheon, so hopefully we see that in a second. Well, he's paying out, so he's definitely buying stuff. It's kind of interesting that they have these little play mats there where it's like you pre-put your money down of what you're going to pay other players as they draft the card. I know I guess they're waiting on Gunn still. But like, could he look up and see that he's paying him money? I wonder what the social rule is for that. Maybe like when the players next to you have selected their cards, you can put your money down, because sort of having that information in advance is definitely a little bit beneficial. It's not a big difference. I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but definitely is a little bit beneficial. If I'm Gunn, I don't think I'm too worried about military right now. Like any of the 2 people next to me, they could just tie me up, but they would need to play 2 military cards to beat me, and they've both got their own concerns. Like Ricky's just going to like play as many blues as he possibly can. Chris is going to play as many greens as he possibly can. And I think the only situation in which either of these players are choosing to play military is when they don't have any other options. Now that I've said that, I don't think that's true for Ricky, because 3 military for him beats Molly to his side, and I do think Molly is a very real threat right now. So Ricky actually is motivated to take a military card here at some point in this round. Probably not for first pick. Very unlikely for first pick. Usually at the beginning here, you're going to see people play like maybe a very juicy guild, but mostly the 6 or 7 or 8 victory point cards right out the gate, or a perfect yellow card for you. And yeah, indeed, we're seeing that arena getting played for Garner, collecting a bunch of money. We see that Chris managed to scoop up a 3rd tablet, which is great for him. We see that Molly managed to gain a guild right off the bat. I can't see what guild it is. Well, it's not the guild that Ricky just played, which is a point for Brown. Wow, that's huge, because that's like 7 points. Because I think Molly's got 4, so it's just as good as that Pantheon is. And Ricky and Gunn exchanged some money with each other. Yeah, wow. It's pretty interesting that Gunn actually has to even buy resources with his crazy map there. In fact, actually, I don't know that he needed to. I need to see his resources again, because he has 2 gray copiers, and then he makes a blue himself. And then I think the Pantheon they showed earlier is 2 bricks and a dust. Maybe he just doesn't have like the second of something, but he does have the 1 market, and he's got a handful of brown cards. How do they do these ring videos? Do they, at the ring place, have like a rotating little thing? They must. They just video that. It's gotta be. All right, we didn't really get to see what Garner chose from or what he ended up selecting there. It's kind of the problem with these cuts and transitions, doing them live especially. It's a little hard to get perfectly in on someone. It is cool that we get to see Garner's hand for some of this. Can't really see Molly's over there, but I do really like the idea of like picking a player and being able to kind of follow them for something live. It's what they do in like certain other kinds of like Magic tournaments, obviously like one-on-one, but the idea of like picking a player and like following that player I think is kind of exciting in some ways. Allows you to like play along at home, which I think is cool. Oh, I see. There's that green card that Gunn could use to complete a set, but he's debating whether he wants to go military here and kind of continue on his parade of just sort of like locking something down. Looks like that's what he's going to do. It's a fine play. Just make sure that Ricky doesn't get cute with buying one, because it's, 6 points for him. Actually, 10 points, 6 points for him, 1 to tie Gunn, and 5 to beat Molly. But most of the blue cards at this stage are 5 or 6 points as well. So Ricky may just be saying, I'm going to be buying blue cards anyway. And Chris, I don't think is going to be buying any red cards this game. It just doesn't make sense. Garner is proving me wrong with the need for resources as he continues to just play the yellow cards that give him piles of money for stacks that he has. So maybe that's why he kind of had this whole plan of like getting stacks of reds. He says, look, I'm not going to contest or even build any of the reds. I have this pile of money that I can use now. I'm going to buy everything I need from Babylon because I get a discount over there. But he still has this problem of just not having access to any of the grays. And I do wonder if not having access to the glass, the blue, is going to end up hurting him. Super curious about Molly's drafting options. Those are always fascinating. Ricky goes ahead and plays Arena. Arena's just super good, right? I mean, here it's 1, 2, 3, 4 points, but actually because he has Midas, it's 2 extra points. So it's just 6 points to play that, and it'll be a 7th point if he builds another level of his wonder. Arena is just so good. It's just in general very good, very flexible, opens up a lot of options. I mean, I suppose if you didn't build your wonder, obviously it's not great, but it's pretty rare that players are going to do that. Looks like Gunn there is holding basically between, I think, 6 points and finishing out the set there. He's probably going to finish the set because he already passed. He passed a compass card. Wow, that's a lot of greens in Garner's hand. That's horrible for Chris, because it means that he couldn't play. What did he play last turn? Could he not afford one of those greens? Like, did he not have the right resources, or like they must need writing or something like that. They look nerdy, so one of those gears would be amazing for him. Would have been 8 points. Right, 1 for that, and then 7 for completing the set. I have to assume he couldn't build it. Chris is not looking too happy there. He knows why. He passed all 3 of them. Yeah, you can see that face. He knows he's doomed. I think you're doomed too, Chris. If you can't build out the sets when you're going assigned strategy, you're in big trouble. Oh, it's even a little bit more points because he has Babylon, so it would have been a second set. So 7 and 2, 3 extra, 10 points. Yeah, those are 10-point cards that he just passed there. He must have not been able to build them. I don't have the costs of all the cards memorized. The backs of these cards are like really fantastical. Is this the new edition or is this like a collector's edition? They're so golden, so beautiful. Molly had it down to 2 and was deciding between the two. She chooses a blue one, it looks like. So does Ricky. Ricky says, I like points. Molly says, I like points too. Do the palaces get built anywhere? I don't remember seeing a palace getting built. Yeah, man, Chris built that 7 points thing. I wonder if I can find really quickly. Science cards for 7 wonders. Okay. Chris gets to build up a little bit more. Is that that's a guild that gives him 2 whole points? Oh, that's miserable. Kind of blocks Molly a little bit, I guess, because it's 4 points for her. Yeah, this is the problem, I think, with Garner's strategy, is there's just not a lot of payoff cards anymore. That gets tricky. All science card for 7 wonders duel. Molly, I think, played maybe a 6-pointer there. Ooh, Ricky gets the 8-pointer. That's really nice. He has to pay a couple bucks for it. Yeah, because he's missing some things. It's actually pretty funny when he's paying. When you have Midas, paying money is doubly as painful, right? Normally you're paying a victory point away for every 3 gold. Now he's paid away 2 victory points. I mean, it's worth it for the 9-point card that he just played. But Gunn played an 8-point card. Didn't have to do, well, I mean, he did have to do work. He had to set up those green cards earlier, but he didn't have to pay quite as much. Really anything at all? Wow, I'm seeing that yellow guild there, and I'm just noticing that for the first time. That would have been absolutely insane for Molly, but she couldn't play it because she didn't have access to blue. I mean, that would have been 9, 10, 11. It's an 11-point guild for Molly. 4 for Ricky, 5 for Garner, and 2 for her leader. That's where that glass is really going to kill you. Ooh, man, that hurts. And then Ricky, oh my God, Ricky is playing the blue guild, which Molly passed him. That must have been what she was deciding between last turn. But yeah, because I guess Ricky only has 5 blues, but it would still be worth 7 for her. I can't tell if she built a palace or if that's a 6-pointer. It looks like a 6-pointer to me. So she maybe didn't know that Ricky was playing a blue that turn, but like she's got to know he's motivated. She's got to assume that Garner's going to play more. I think it was a mistake to not play that blue guild. Could she not afford it? No, she could have afforded it. She absolutely could have afforded it. Ooh, I think I would have played that blue guild if I were her. Probably a close call because she did have to spend a decent chunk of change to buy it. I don't think it made a difference for Ricky either way, really. That guild hall 7 points, but so is that 6-pointer, right? Because it's actually 7 points for him, unless he already has it, which I don't think he does. I don't think he played any of the 6-pointers. Yeah, just everything is turning up nicely for Ricky. Gun's doing a lot of thinking at the end here. All right, Chris is going to leave a 6-pointer here, which is great. Like, he likes to see that as his 4th play of the round or whatever it is. 5 points for Garner here. Here we go. That would have been an extra point, Molly. He's just paying away points every time because he has to keep spending coins, right? He's spending all these coins to do these things. Oh, Molly has to discard? Wow, that's miserable. What did she pass? My guess is she discarded a military card, doesn't want Ricky to pick it up, punch her for 5, but she doesn't need to play it if she just prevents him from playing it. That being said, there's a couple of rounds left. Like maybe she's just supposed to have played it herself. We've got some tectonic shifting happening here. Yeah, I really wonder what she would have discarded. And Ricky, yeah, he plays that Dream Blue Guild. That's amazing for him. He slam dunked that. And I missed what? Oh, I see. Gun upgraded Alexandria there. He must have had not some great options left. Yeah, I see. Ricky's hand doesn't have good stuff. I'm going to assume that Molly discarded a red there. I think that probably makes the most sense. I don't know what that yellow card was, but I'm sure the green ones are garbage for him, so it's kind of a no-brainer. This epic gets really awkward at the end. You know, you super hope that you get past something that's worth like a couple points in the end. It's like one of those things with the science cards where like no one's going for them. It's like you get past 2 science cards, like, okay, that's a point. Either I play it for a point or I discard it for 3 coins and that's a point. Ugh. Cruddy way to end. And that's actually, I think, one of the reasons to leave your wonder just open for the third round. Like it's nice to use the weaker second round cards to do it, but then when you get to the third round, if you have a bad hand, there's just nothing you can do. 6 points here seems pretty sweet. He's looking like he's going to take 3 points though. Curious. Maybe the 6-pointer costs him too much money? How could that be possible though? He has so many resources. I also noticed that on the previous turn, Gunn didn't build the yellow guild, which I think is a mistake. I mean, he used it or did something and built his wonder instead of building the yellow guild, which is worth 2. And then I think Ricky has 4. So then like 6 points. Because you're generally going to assume that you're going to get something worth less than 6 points by the end of the round. I think that was a missed opportunity. Garner builds another military building for the 1 point, I guess, for the lulz. Yeah, Ricky's got 4 yellows. So yeah, the yellow guild would have been 6 points for Gunn, and he could have built it for free. I think that building his third level there was a mistake. Even if he built it this turn, right? Instead, he's going to be stuck playing one of these green cards, which is worth plus 3 points, instead of that yellow that I was talking about, which was worth 6 points. Bummer for him. And then Ricky here getting past some military cards. I guess that means he plays one and Molly ends up losing military. Yeah, so if she did indeed discard a military before, that's really, really unfortunate because she could have or should have played it. I can see why playing that blue card maybe feels better than playing the military card, but it's a 6-point swing for her. 6 points for Ricky, man. Doesn't make a difference to him either way. What a nice last set of cards to get past. I mean, you could get past junk, right? If he got past 2 greens, or like a dud yellow card or something like that. A dud guild. 6 points is a pretty nice final play for Chris. Extra military. Oh my God. Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Then discarding. Yeah, Molly just totally ran out of steam here. I think that leader also just totally hurt her. It was kind of pathetic 2-point leader. Ricky grabs that. What did he play in the previous round? Oh, he upgraded his wonder. Yeah, so this round did not play out so well for Molly, who had to discard 2 cards. Pretty miserable. Garner was just playing onto his stacks, and I mean, he proved me wrong that he actually got to like make more choices than I thought, but his points were not great. Chris was totally stymied by the fact that he couldn't get access to any writing, and so therefore his green machine didn't come through in the way that you would hope, and the fact that all the cards were clustered together, which I guess in this case actually didn't make a difference because he couldn't buy any of them, it seemed like. And Ricky did what he wanted to do. He got fat guilds and he got hecka money along the way. Or sorry, hecka blue buildings along the way. So they're here, but I wrote down their scores, so I can tell you their scores now and we can wrap up. So we have Chris here as Babylon with 51 points, which is not a terribly good score. He ends up in last place. I think that's in large part because things just didn't end up coming together. It seemed like he had the production. He was building green. He just like completely missed one of the legs of the tripod, which you need to like really go kind of crazy there. And so then he just got punched a whole bunch, and that was the end of the story. Garner surprises me with 54 points. I thought for sure he was coming in last place, but instead he gets the coveted second to last place. And that, I think, is off the back of those yellow cards really scoring a lot of points for him. You know, he's got his wonder built up and everything like that. So that stuff is all good. And obviously 18 points for military never, ever hurts. Molly ends at 55 for third place. She definitely stumbled a lot more at the end than I thought. I think part of that came down to sort of that blue card. I think it came down to having not enough, or sorry, blue card, I mean like not having access to glass. I think it came down to not having the leader there. I think with a couple different choices, she might have been a little bit closer. That being said, Ricky, who ends up winning, has 67 points to Gunn's 64 points. So the right side of the table definitely crushed the left side of the table. And Ephesus and Alexandria are both kind of the more economic, I think, based wonders, and you really see that play out here, where Gunn basically got his fingers in a little bit of everything. He had a really nice, 3 cards of for 18 points of military is totally the sweet spot, right? 6 points per military card is exactly where you want to be in terms of, the dream of those military points. His Xenophon leader was kind of a waste, so that was sort of a wasted action, unfortunately, for him, which is the difference of maybe a point, right? If he ends up discarding it instead, or just plays a leader that's a little bit more impactful earlier or later on. I did see that his other leader was the one that gave him some military options. I'm sure it would have cost more money at the beginning of the game, so we can't say for sure that was or wasn't the right call, but maybe would have given him an extra card play somewhere, a couple extra points. And I already commented on the fact that I think that Gunn missed out on that yellow guild. I think that really was that, and I said it was 3 points. Like that might have been the difference between winning and losing, honestly. I wasn't there, and it's hard to see the camera, so obviously it's hard to tell, but I think that might be the difference. And obviously we've got the hindsight here to say, hey, this is exactly what it looked like and how close it was. And Ricky, just off the back of playing tons of blue cards, right, and build up that stack. Every single one of them is +1. He knew that he wanted that leader, and he played it out from the first turn of the game, which is really interesting. Like he just said, look, I know this guy is good. I know he's gonna pay dividends. In this game, he played, it was worth 5 points, and then he played this other leader, Midas, which was worth 4 points for him because he's playing Ephesus. Just seemed like totally in control there. He also quipped that this was his lowest score of the day, even though he won by a pretty fair margin there, which I think sort of goes to show that A, certainly like the experience and knowing what those scores are going to look like, but B, I think that this table played pretty defensively, taking cards that maybe were good for other players to prevent them from sort of running away with what everything looked like. That was an interesting game. I learned a lot about Seven Wonders as I was playing through, and I feel a little bit more equipped to play myself. I'm very curious to see. I'd love to like really hone in on one player's draft sometime in the future if that's an option. So if we can do that kind of thing for coverage, that'd be pretty sweet. But thank you for taking this time to go through this video with me, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you soon for our next video. Have a great week. Ciao.